Here's a straightforward request. This person asked, how do you paint a country dirt road going straight back in the snow? 2 words, angles, values. As always, if you're trying to paint a country road in the snow, you're not going to be able to paint a country road in the snow, chances are. But if you take observation as to where you are, what the light's doing, what's actually happening in the visual language, you'll be able to see and therefore be able to paint anything you want to. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I said 2 words, angles and values. I have several pictures here, each one in a different kind of light, and some from different points of view than others. You see, this one has us standing about right here. It has sunlight, so we have shadows on the snow. That's one thing, and so we see dark light, dark light, dark light that we don't see when the sun's not shining. But we also see the angles on the side of the road. That creates what you're calling for, going back into the distance. So you see an angle going this way, you see an angle going this way. Now that's one scene, but then here's another, and you see this is different. In this one we have a little bit of light filtering, a little bit of sunlight filtering in. We have mostly the snow in shadow, and we don't see the sides of the roads quite so clearly, therefore you don't have value contrast in this area right here. So you'd have to look for all those things in order to paint them. So let's see what the angles are doing here. The angle on this side is doing this, and on this side is doing that. So that's another interpretation of a country road going back into the distance in the snow. And here's yet another one. In this one we see, again, a different light, different kind of light. It's probably late in the afternoon or early in the morning. We see a little bit of light coming across here. But look at the angles. Angles of the road, angles of the tracks in the road. You see that this time the angles are going like this, and then we see the tracks more clearly. So we have angles here, angles here, angles here, and angles here that define the road. So you see, your observation of what you're actually looking at and what's actually going on will determine the decisions that you make. So rather than try to show you a complete painting, as always, I want to show you how to find those angles, how to find those values, how to make those decisions. Perhaps then you'll be able to make your decisions from there. So it's not just the road that defines the road, but it's location in this case. And you can see here, we don't see any real big shadows, any really deep shadows. In fact, we don't see cast shadows at all. So, and also looking at the sky, we can tell it's overcast. So all we see here then are those subtle definitions of the angles and the values of shadows and light. Look at the angles. What are the angles doing? And this time we'll not just look at them, but we'll draw them. We see the angles that define the road. You see how they're tilted here? You see how they're closer together than the angles in the previous one we just looked at? And so what we'll do then is we'll find where does the road start? Where does it start on the picture itself? And there we would place it in proximity on our canvas, and it would be something about like that as to where the road starts. And then what are those angles? Not just those angles, but there are angles here too that define where the trees are and where the earth begins. Here too, where the trees are and where the earth begins. And we can see that this angle has kind of a curve on it, and it goes just a little bit. Maybe you might see it if we were on the clock between kind of between 3 almost to 4 o'clock. So then we would just draw that angle. That then, as we're coming on over, we see that the next angle that we see almost comes straight down, not quite. So it's bent more towards, if we were on the clock, more towards 5 o'clock. So an angle does something like that. We see this angle really comes straight down. It's bent more, or pointing more towards 6 o'clock if we're looking at the clock, and I'm talking about the analog clock now. And so that angle does something like that. Then we see this angle, one on the inside of the track here, This angle does more like that. So on the clock, that's pointing more towards 7 and a little bit more towards 8. So that angle, starting about right here, does something like this. Actually, something like that. Take that away. Then we see the angle on the other side, and we see that that angle then begins to aim a little bit more, you might say, kind of on the 8 o'clock. So we have the starting of this angle, this gap in between, starting this angle, and then what do we have over here? We have another angle that's pointing, well, it is not 9 o'clock, it's more 8. So I'm saying 6, 7, and 8, kind of going in that way. So, and we can see that it really actually begins about right here, and it starts about right here, and that we could do that. Now we have located the major angles of that scene. We see back here, what angles are we looking at there? We see an angle that we could just say kind of goes like that, that defines where we see the edge of the trees and through the sky. And this angle kind of weaves in and out, but kind of suggests more of a vertical. See, like this, sort of like that. Now we have set, let's get that closer in like that. Now we have set a major, you might say, points on our visual map that show us the angles that we're looking at. So what do we look for next? We look for value. Angles and value. Now we find the values by squinting. And when we squint, like this, when you squint at this, it's going to reduce itself to something like we see right here. So we can tell then when we squint at the scene, we can tell where, well, pretty much where things are falling more in shadow. In other words, they're not catching that ambient light that's coming from the sky, or not being reflected by the ambient lights coming from the sky. And if you will make a habit, well, let's call it a habit, of locating those first before you start painting, it really goes a long way to helping you the painting. And that I do with the no-tan, where we just set a pattern here that tells us where those darks need to go. So I'm going to do that very quickly here, and to do that you can use any transparent color, and we'll go into the colors that I would suggest for doing a study like this in just a moment. But I think I'll just move into the ultramarine blue and pull with the solvent, a solvent in my brush, just make myself a wash right here, very thin wash. It doesn't have to be very dark, just enough to be able to tell the difference, or be able to read it when I put it on. And what does that do? That goes right in here and defines that area where that shadow belongs. So we can just very quickly throw that in to show that area where that shadow belongs. And that is with squinting. Now if you're out in location, on location, the squinting is going to enable that. Now what I'm seeing there is I needed to bring that down a little bit further. That's where I make this correction. Bring that down just a little bit further, and that then defines the darks on that side. This shows the ruts in the road, and that falls into shadow too. We see a little bit of shadow right back in there, and so we can begin that by following the angles here and just bringing that shadow on down on the road, remembering or observing still what that angle does. Over here we can do the same thing, where we start with where we see that shadow and bring it down at the angle we see it, sort of like that. And then that will show us, and I will then go over here and do the same thing and get just a little bit more of that wash on the brush, and following squinting. Now, of course I don't have to squint if I've already got it thrown into very much out of focus, but that's what squinting does. It throws it out of focus for you. And then we can bring that down, a little bit more of that wash in here, and then we see that shadow falling right in here. Now we have a guide. Now we can tell, make that just a little bit clearer right in here. Now we can tell what that road is doing, and at this point, if we need to edit a little bit to get it a little bit more precise so it's a little bit better guide to us, we can do that with a paper towel, just by going back with a paper towel and In this case, what I would do is make that just a little bit more precise, just like this, and get rid of that, and right here, and then right here. Now, with that kind of guide, then you can go in and begin to build your painting. Now, I would suggest a palette. If you're going to do a simple painting like that as a study, I would suggest a palette of a warm color and a cool color. I would suggest something like, you could use burnt sienna as your warm color, or you could use transparent oxide red by Rembrandt, which I'm using here, or you could use quinacridone burnt orange. Any one of those that gives you the warm color, and a cool color like ultramarine blue, not one that leans towards green like phthalo or Prussian or any of those, but the ultramarine blue that leans a little bit more towards violet. That way. And with those two colors, with these mixtures, if you lay them out in values such as I've done here, then you will know that where your in shadow areas are. Let's move this now. Now you can see this is a good pattern for guiding your eye in here. And this is a good pattern for guiding your eye in here. Now you can build the values according to what you observe. Put the darker values as darker values, the middle values as middle values, the lighter values as lighter values, and then place the details. Now that is guiding you through observation. So rather than to demonstrate the actual painting for you, why don't you take that one and give it a try? Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.